Welcome to Ministry in Motion, where we explore best practices for your ministry in the 21st century. I'm Derek Morris.
And I'm Anthony Kent, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to Ministry in Motion. Whether you're a pastor or an elder, or if you have any kind of role in a local church with ministry, we're delighted that you've joined us.
And you know, our topic today, Anthony, is an important one. It's reconnecting with inactive church members.
Exactly, Derek. It's a major issue. You know, in some places, there are more inactive members than active members. And this is a major concern.
So you go to a town, you're saying, if you were to do an analysis, there may be more inactive people from the congregation out there somewhere in the city than actually attend each week.
It's a frightening scenario, but it's reality in some places.
And I'm excited about our guest today, Anthony, because you've agreed, you've had a lot of experience in working with reconnecting with inactive members. You've had broad experience in evangelism, and certainly that's a key tool for connecting with people who felt separated. So we're going to go right into our study, and thanks so much for being both the lead host and our guest today for Ministry in Motion. Let's talk about the reality of the problem first. How serious of a problem is the inactive church member?
It's a very significant problem. And the frightening thing is that it's often silent. One Sabbath, people will be there, and just in a few weeks, they'll disappear from the church and the community and silently slip away. And that the community can, in some respects, it's frightening, but not even miss them, and that's disturbing.
So you're telling me that most people who become inactive don't publicly announce that event is going to occur? It's kind of a silent exit?
Exactly, yeah. Normally it's not a high-profile departure, and it's probably not even planned. It's something that just happens. Now, we know that there are reasons for it that cause and typically cause it. It may come as a bit of a surprise to some that rarely is it a theological difference with the church. It's normally some other issue.
So it's not a problem necessarily with Bible teaching. What are some of the possible causes for a person disconnecting from a family that they've been a part of?
There are kind of some things that will take place in a person's life which lead to extraordinary change and upheaval in the person's life. We often refer to these as anxiety-provoking events. Some examples of these are the loss of a spouse, the death of a spouse, the death of a child, a divorce. But it can be even things that we may not realise as being so significant. It can be just even a change of sleeping habits, a change of diet, a relocation from moving from one home to another, a change of job. These kinds of things can lead to an enormous change in a person's life. And when those changes take place, they become somewhat vulnerable. And what tends to happen is that these anxiety-provoking events don't just come single and by themselves. There can be a cluster of them.
Right, so you may have several things which in and of themselves a person could handle one.
Exactly.
But 2, 3, 4 all come together. And then, but don't people call out for help? Don't they say, I feel overwhelmed? Surely they'd go to their church or their pastor or a leader and say, a friend, this is too much. Do they do that?
They may, but it may not be readily disclosed. At times when people are going through difficulties, we know that they're not their normal self. They're a little more irritable. Mixing, socialising, fellowshipping with them, it may not be as easy as it once was. Once it may have been a pleasure, but now a person, and I'm not sure if this is the right word to use, but a person might even be a little prickly and may not have the same fun-loving sense of humour. They may be a little more introverted. And there is a change that just makes it more difficult to fellowship with them.
You know, that makes sense when you talk about feeling overloaded. It's like you run out of any margin, and there's not a lot of flexibility left. So you're saying that even something that may seem rather small could trigger
Exactly.
a different response from what would be normal in regular circumstances.
Exactly. And they might respond in a totally unusual and perhaps even inappropriate way. For example, in a Bible study group, there might be a sharp disagreement where in the past the person may be normally placid, agreeable, look for the common ground, but now there's a sharpness and disputes can arise. And that's not typical. And some of these might be, and I guess the person may not even be aware of it, but it could be a cry for help. You're not even aware of the pain and the issues that I'm going through. And this is meant to be a caring place. People may not even be cognizant and aware of it, but it can be something that's underneath the surface.
So a discerning listener might say, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And rather than rebuke them for their inappropriate behavior,
Yeah.
say, maybe there's some other issues that I need to be attentive to.
And you know, their behaviour may even be shocking, as well as being confrontational. And this isn't just for people who are members of a church, it can be church leaders. They could be going through things and they're doing things that are unexpected, inappropriate. It's dangerous to give examples, but I don't know if that would be helpful.
Well, after the break, we'll talk some more, but apparently they may be crying for help and not even knowing it. And we need to learn how to hear those cries for help. I'm guessing that we might even be able to avoid the inactivity if we knew how to hear people. So after the break, how to hear. What do we do if we miss it and they just drop out? What strategies would help as we think about reconnecting with inactive church members? We'll be right back after the break with more Ministry in Motion. Welcome back to Ministry in Motion. Our topic today, reconnecting with inactive church members. Our guest and host of the program, Anthony Kent. Anthony, great to have this conversation about a vital topic.
It is a vital topic, Derek, yes.
And we've talked about how when people go through a cluster of hard events in their lives, oftentimes they'll cry out for help, though sometimes in unusual ways. Unpack that for us.
Well, there is that cry for help, and often it's inappropriate behaviour, but also when there is no help that comes as a result of their cry for help, there's anger. And as a result of that anger, there's often a fragmentation of relationships. So there's often an argument perhaps with the pastor, a teacher, or a deacon, or an elder, or a church administrator.
And they say, I'm done with this church. And my reaction would be, what is going on here? But most people don't listen.
That's right, that's right. And so it leads to a further change. Attendance at worship will stop, involvement with committees, and they've often joined a committee and been a part of the fabric of the church because they've enjoyed it. The Bible study will stop, financial support will stop. One of the last critical signs is that they stop bringing their children to church.
So they might kind of just bring them to a Bible study but not stay themselves? Or...
That's right. Drop the kids off, go away and do something else, and then come back and pick up the
Now,
kids.
I'd like to be proactive and say, let's intervene at that time, because then we wouldn't have to have this program about
Exactly.
reconnecting with inactive members. But
Yeah.
a lot of times that doesn't happen, does it? People don't even notice. They're oblivious to this change in behavior. So then what happens? Do they just stop? Do they make a plan and say, I'm not coming back after this week? Or is it kind of a gradual thing?
It can be it can be gradual, it can be abrupt.
Okay.
But there is normally an attitude of resignation. There may not be a letter of resignation that's posted into the church or an email sent or something like that, but there will be an attitude of resignation and then a reinvestment that takes place.
So it's like nothing's going to change, nothing is going to help, because actually the church event is not the only thing going on, is it?
Exactly, yeah. And all of this can take place not in a matter of months, but weeks, and as short as 3 weeks, which the message that I took away from this is, in our churches, we need to know who's there, what's happening with our friends, those in the community, and paying close attention and care.
Well, before the program's over, hopefully we can talk about how to train some volunteers
Please.
to identify those cries for help.
Yeah.
But let's say no one heard them. They resigned themselves to the fact that no help is coming.
Yeah.
And they've reinvested. Maybe they started hiking on the weekends or camping or something. And you're coming now and you're saying, wow, there's 200 inactive church members in this city. How do I go about trying to reconnect with those one at a time? How do I do that?
You know, I think Luke chapter 15 offers us a wonderful model. It has the 3 parables there of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the prodigal son. And a common theme there, particularly in the lost sheep and the lost coin, was the seeking process. God seeks, and I think we need to model that in our ministries as well. We need to seek, and seek until we find, and do things specifically in the seeking process.
You know, it's interesting that the sheep knows it's lost but doesn't know how to get back. Yeah. Are there inactive members, they know they're not in the right place but just don't know how to get back?
Yeah, and they need help to come back. So much of the literature talks about the importance of a visit, a reach-out contact. That's better than a formal letter from the church. It's better than an email. It's better than a text. It's personal contact.
But you said that some of these people may be quite angry, or have at least in the past been angry, and that's why they left. Mm-hmm. Aren't some people intimidated about making that kind of visit? How do you prepare for that?
Some can be intimidated by it, and it can be a painful experience making some of those visits, but not all. In my experience, it's been far more rewarding. Yes, there are tears, and that's typically the case, but there isn't typically an appreciation of the visit. These people love Jesus. They've invested in this church, and they've been part of His church, and they miss it.
And that's obviously a generalization, because some may not miss it, but you're saying the vast majority?
Yes.
That's from your experience?
Yes, they still have.
So they still believe,
yes.
They still want community.
Yes.
So how do we help them design a way back that makes sense for them?
One of the important things, and this too is found in Luke 15, it's the need of grace. The younger brother in the prodigal son story, he knew all about grace when he came home and experienced it from his father.
His father throws his arms around him.
That's right. The heir to the whole father's estate had everything that was going from his father.
That's the older brother, right?
That's right. Not only did he need to inherit the tangible estate, he needed to inherit the intangible, the grace that the father had that came with the estate as well. And so when people come back, the last thing we want to say to people is, it's been a long time since we've seen you here.
Right.
You know, and kind of language that's
judgmental, critical.
Yeah.
Not willing to come into the party, to use the biblical story.
Exactly. Instead, it'd be so much better to simply say, it's lovely to see you back. Would you like to come and sit by me? You know, we
have to explain all of the details of back then, or is it enough to just...
let's move on. There might be need for forgiveness to be sought. But a simple invitation, look, we weren't expecting guests for lunch, and our house isn't really ready for guests. We were going to have some baked beans for lunch. Do you want to come and eat our baked beans at lunchtime? Just
beautiful.
A genuine expression of love and grace and acceptance, and embrace them back into the fold of community.
You know, after the break, I'd like to talk about how to help a church get ready, but also how to intervene before we have those people disappearing. So right after the break, we'll come back and we'll talk about that. I know you have a lot more to share. Perhaps you have some questions. We'd love to hear from you. You can write to us at feedback@ministryinmotion.tv. Maybe a lesson that you've learned in reconnecting with inactive church members. But certainly the problem's real. The need to show the grace and love of God is real. Right after the break, we'll discover how we can be that welcoming and loving community. We'll be right back with more Ministry in Motion. Welcome back to Ministry in Motion. Our topic today is reconnecting with inactive church members. Our guest is Anthony Kent. Anthony, this has been really helpful. We're talking now about hearing the cry, but if we don't, we've got to make that initial visit. How do we communicate with that inactive church member the love and the grace that you talked about in Luke chapter 15?
Well, in making that visit, I don't think we go with an attitude of being judgmental.
Where have you been?
Yeah, exactly. We go there with a pastoral and a caring concern. Mm-hmm. We may even need to take 2 handkerchiefs, one for each person that's going to attend, and let the pain come out. If the people are still experiencing pain from the fracture that may have taken place, we're not there to defend anyone. We're not there to be involved in an argument. We're there to listen and to respond with grace and acceptance.
Is it appropriate, Anthony? You talked about this cluster of anxiety-provoking events that may be kind of a tipping point and they cry out, no one hears.
Yes.
Is it appropriate to say what was going on at that time? How did we fail to be the loving community?
Yeah. That's most appropriate. And Derek, I would even add an apology. I'm sorry that we weren't kind and more gracious to you.
And you can't change anything though, but just being heard?
Yes, yeah, and listening and not defending, because there's that conflict that typically takes place before a person leaves.
Yes.
We're not there to defend and uphold what's happened in the past, but to reach out. One of the other critical things is that all of this may not be achieved in one single visit.
So there may be several times that you'll visit that person before they ever think of coming back to church?
Exactly. Now, there are some things that we should do and shouldn't do. I enjoy praying with people. And even praying with people who no longer consider themselves believers, I've discovered to be very appropriate and helpful and appreciated. Listening, praying with them. Another thing that I wouldn't do, some might even want to give us money. But, I've never accepted money in that situation. I'm not looking for it.
Right.
We're seeking...
That's not why you're there.
Exactly. We're wanting to bring these people back into a close, warm relationship with the church, but primarily with Jesus
with God.
Christ.
I want to come back to that prayer issue, because sometimes people can use prayer in a manipulative way too, like, God help so-and-so to know they really should come back. You're talking more of a prayer of blessing, it sounds like.
Exactly, yeah. Asking the Lord to lead these people in the life, to put a shield around them and to protect them.
Yes.
And to make Himself known to them, or so that they can enjoy this relationship with Him again. And these types of visits, they don't need to be a long visit. A visit with eternal benefits doesn't have to be an eternal visit.
5 minutes?
If that does it, good. 15 minutes can be enough.
You're not wanting them to hope you'll leave then, you see?
No. We don't want to outstay the welcome. We want to be welcome again, because we will need to visit. We will need to plan the future with them. Hopefully we can talk to them about how they're being missed at church. We need to be friendly and warm, but not gushy and over the top.
But let's say they in one of your visits, maybe third, fourth visit, They say, you know, I'd really like to come back to church, but I feel a little awkward. You know, I haven't been in church for 5 years. I don't know how to come back.
Yeah.
What would you do?
We need to plan that visit. We need to find an appropriate time and place where they can come to the church and come into the community and be well received. It might be a shorter service than a full service. It may be even preparing some of the people that there was conflict with. You know, our friend is coming back. How are you doing? How are you going to respond to this?
Back to your Luke 15 analogy, showing grace and love.
Yeah, to both sides.
Yes.
Or the multiple sides here.
Right.
And planning for it as much as possible. You know, it's impossible to plan every minute detail.
Right.
But being prepared and having the grace ready and warm and ready to go.
You talk about that like that's something you're actually involving the individual in. Are they helping design their own way back?
That's very helpful, you know, when they can have input, because we don't want to be squeezing a promise,
Right.
like, promise me that you'll be at church
Right.
this weekend for the 11 o'clock service.
So if they say, you know, I think I need a couple of weeks just to get mentally ready, you're not going to drop a guilt trip on them?
Not at all. Give them time. We don't want to, you know, enter into a procrastination
Someday
period.
kind of.
Yeah. We need to move towards a definite target. But we need to do this with patience, kindness and love.
Last minute, what do we do to help church members to be more sensitive to those cries for help so that when a crisis comes in a person's life, they don't have to reinvest somewhere else other than church?
To me, it's knowing the community. You know, if a person's behaviour is completely out of touch with their past behaviour, check out with them. How's things? How are you getting on? Is everything okay? That's the easiest time to embrace, but it can be the easiest time to just to take a step back and just say, I'm just going to give that person some space. Whereas in actual fact, rather than space, they may need an embrace.
That sounds like a picture of a loving and caring community. Anthony, thanks for sharing with us a vital topic, reconnecting with inactive church members. And perhaps as you've been listening to the program today, you say, I can relate to that. I can think of people right now who need someone to just go and extend love and grace and maybe be patient while they're designing a way to come back. I'm thankful that you joined us. We've got another resource for you that may be helpful for you. It's this journal, Ministry, an international journal for pastors, goes to about 80,000 leaders around the world. You may be eligible for a complimentary subscription. If you're a pastor, go to our website, tell us a little about your church, and tell us if you're interested. We'll certainly consider your request. If you're a church elder, we have resources for you at our website too, ministryinmotion.tv. And we're just so thankful that you can be with us on this journey, discovering best practices for your ministry in the 21st century. Until next time, may God bless you in your ministry for Him.